The kitchen smelled of freshly brewed coffee and something else, something warmer, heavier, that wrapped itself around my senses like silk. It was him, Caleb. The scent of engine grease clinging faintly to his skin, the sharp undertone of cedar from his cologne, the sheer presence of him so overwhelming in the small space that it made the air hum. His breath was hot against my neck, uneven, like he had been holding back for far too long, and now the dam was cracking. My back was pressed hard against the counter, the cold marble biting into my hips, grounding me as his hands gripped my waist with a trembling urgency. Desperation danced in his touch, but there was a reverence to it too, as if he feared he might break me or himself if he pushed too far, too fast. He was all heat and tension and restraint, his lean body taut with the weight of what we both knew should never have been allowed to bloom. There was electricity between us, raw and undeniable. It crackled in the air, in the stolen glances, in the space between his fingertips and my skin. A slow-burning fire that had smoldered for months, fed by silences that spoke too loudly, by every lingering look and every brush of fingers that should have been innocent. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not here in my kitchen. Not with him. Not with my daughter's boyfriend. I'm Rachel. I'm 38, a single mother who has lived the better part of her life in service of another's. Emma, my daughter, is 21 now. Fierce, clever, with her father's sharp intellect and my gentler expressions. I raised her alone, juggling 2 jobs, scraping by while trying to give her a life I never had. For years, I poured every ounce of myself into her world, never noticing how much of my own had quietly withered away. Until Caleb. He came into our lives 8 months ago. A quiet thunderstorm in a denim jacket. 25, tall and unassuming, with hands made for fixing broken things and eyes that held too many truths. Emma met him at the cafe where she worked. I remember how she lit up the first time she said his name. Caleb. Like it meant something. Like it was the beginning of a story she hadn't yet written. And he was good to her. Better than most. Thoughtful, present, gentle. He brought her little things. Books he thought she'd like, tools for her car, flowers for no reason. He stayed for dinner, helped clean up, asked about my day. Always polite, always kind. I told myself he was just a good man. But there were moments. Moments that didn't fit neatly into the narrative I was trying to force myself to believe. The way his eyes sometimes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. The curve of his smile when he caught me in a moment of laughter, as if that sound belonged to him. The way he once brushed a strand of hair from my face, slow and deliberate, his fingers grazing my cheek like a whisper. I should have stopped it then. Should have built a wall taller than the guilt already rising in my chest. But a part of me, a part one had buried under years of motherhood, responsibility, and exhaustion, began to stir. It didn't matter that I tried to deny it, that I scolded myself after every stray thought. Because once something wakes inside you, something that craves, that remembers what it means to feel seen, it doesn't go back to sleep so easily. And now here we were, in this kitchen. The line had been drawn so clearly for so long, but tonight, with his breath warm on my skin and the scent of coffee fading into something far more dangerous, I realized we had already crossed it. There was no going back. Not now. Not after this. What do you do when the line between right and wrong blurs so completely that you can't even see it anymore? I didn't know. Not at first. It was a question that lingered in the back of my mind for days after that night, twisting itself into something darker, something unrecognizable. The truth, though? I didn't find the answer until later. Much later. But that night was the tipping point. The night I couldn't ignore it any longer. It all started so simply, like how most things do when they're about to change everything. Caleb had come over to drop off the jacket Emma had left at his place. I hadn't been expecting him, but when he knocked, I answered. Emma was at work, and the house felt too quiet, too empty, with just the 2 of us there. I could almost hear the quiet hum of tension in the air, like the soft buzz before a thunderstorm. The moment Caleb stepped inside, it was like the world outside disappeared, leaving just the two of us, standing in the dim hallway. He handed me the jacket, but there was something in the way he stood too close to me. Something unspoken, a subtle charge that thrummed between us, almost electric. His fingers brushed mine as he passed it over, and the touch sent a jolt through me, warm, lingering. I wasn't sure if it was his touch, or the way his dark eyes held mine as he pulled his hand away, but something shifted. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look away. The moment stretched on too long, just a breath longer than it should have, but neither of us moved. I should have stepped back. I should have broken the silence and filled the space between us with words. But I didn't. I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, too loud, too frantic. Then he leaned in. I didn't pull away. I didn't stop him. I didn't even move. His lips brushed mine, soft and tentative, like a question that didn't need to be spoken aloud. I felt it then. The sharpness of desire rising up in my throat, drowning out the steady voice of reason that had always kept me grounded. His kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, like he had been waiting for this moment forever, waiting for me. His hands found their way to my waist, and I could feel the heat of his body against mine, pressing me back against the hallway wall. Time stretched thin, and everything around us disappeared. There was no Emma. There was no right or wrong. There was just him and that kiss. It wasn't even about the kiss itself. It was about the way it felt like I had stepped off a cliff, and I wasn't sure if I was falling or flying. But then I pulled back. Not quickly. Not with the urgency I had expected. It was a slow, trembling retreat, like I was unwilling to admit what I already knew. The truth was there, hanging in the air between us, sharp and painful. "Caleb." "No," I whispered, but my voice cracked. It wasn't the command I wanted it to be. It wasn't the firm rejection I had imagined. It was a plea, a desperate plea that broke free of me without permission. The kind of plea I didn't know I had in me. I stepped back, but my hands lingered on his arms, unsure, unwilling to completely sever the thread between us. His gaze stayed locked with mine, searching, confused. I could see the question in his eyes, the hurt, and a hint of something else, something raw, something vulnerable. But I didn't push him out. I didn't tell Emma. I didn't do any of the things I should have done. Instead, I stayed quiet, silent. It felt like the only choice I had, though it felt like an unbearable weight pressing down on me. Silence had a way of consuming everything, didn't it? It settled into the spaces where words should have been, taking up room that I couldn't fill. I watched him, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Neither of us moved for what felt like a lifetime. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not just between Caleb and me, but within me. I could feel the ground beneath my feet start to tremble, just slightly, as though the foundation of everything I knew was beginning to crack. It was a strange thing, the silence that followed. It wasn't a peaceful silence, but a quiet filled with all the things we hadn't said. The things I had been too afraid to say. And in that silence, I began to understand something that I hadn't before. The line between right and wrong wasn't always so clear. It wasn't always black and white. Sometimes it was something in between. Something messy and tangled up with the truth of who we were. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I wasn't sure who he was either. But one thing was certain. That night had changed everything. And somehow I knew things could never go back to the way they were before. So I stayed silent. Because even though I should have screamed, should have told someone, should have done something, I couldn't. Not then. Not yet. But the silence spoke louder than any words ever could. And as I stood there, frozen in place, I realized that the truth I had been avoiding was finally starting to unravel. The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant creak of the floorboards upstairs. I stood there, watching Caleb as he rummaged through the drawer by the door, looking for the jacket he had left earlier that evening. It should have been just another normal moment, like any other. But as I stood there, something in the air felt charged, different, dangerous even. Caleb's return had been unexpected. He had come back to grab his jacket, something so trivial, so simple. But the way he moved now, the way he leaned into the space between us as he reached for it, made the moment feel anything but ordinary. His body was close, too close. And as he pulled the jacket from the back of the chair, his shoulder brushed against mine. I felt the heat of him, the weight of his presence like a physical pressure on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I should have stepped back. I should have said something, anything, to break the tension, to remind him that this was wrong, that I didn't want this. But I didn't. The words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, caught between what I knew I should do and what my body was begging me to allow. When he turned toward me, his eyes met mine, and in that split second, something shifted. It was as if time slowed, as if the world outside of us had ceased to exist. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, could feel the pulse in my throat quicken. There was no hesitation in his movements, no lingering doubt in his gaze. And when he kissed me, everything else melted away. It wasn't like the kisses of movies or novels, the kind where everything was supposed to be slow, deliberate, full of meaning. This kiss was urgent, hungry, almost frantic. His lips were against mine with a force that took me by surprise. And in that moment, I didn't know where I ended and he began. There was no thought, no reason. Just the overwhelming heat of it, a fire that spread through my veins and left me dizzy with want. His hands, rough and insistent, slid down my back, pulling me closer. I could feel the tension in his body, the need radiating off of him in waves. And I responded. I pressed into him, letting myself fall into the heat of it all. I should have been fighting it, should have been pulling away, but I didn't. I couldn't. He guided me, his hands firm but gentle as they pushed me back against the counter. The cold metal pressed against my spine, but it didn't matter. Not in that moment. In that moment, nothing mattered except the way he felt against me, the way his touch seemed to ignite something in me that I had buried for so long. For the first time in years, I felt alive, raw, exposed but alive. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't beautiful. There were no carefully planned moments, no perfect synchrony. Our movements were clumsy, desperate, and messy. Our breaths came in ragged bursts, crashing together in the stillness of the kitchen. And yet, every awkward, imperfect moment only seemed to heighten the intensity of it. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't judging. I was just feeling. When it was over, the kitchen was eerily silent again, save for our heavy breaths. Caleb's forehead pressed against mine, and I could feel the steady thrum of his heartbeat against my chest. Our bodies were tangled, still connected in the aftershock of what had just happened. The air between us was thick with something unspoken, something both exhilarating and terrifying. The guilt came flooding in, but it didn't come all at once. It was slow at first, a creeping realization that what we had just done, what I had just allowed to happen, was a boundary that could never be undone. I had crossed a line that I had promised myself I would never cross. And now there was no going back. But even as that guilt gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, there was another part of me, one I couldn't ignore, that felt something else entirely. Something raw, something primal. Desire. The desire I had kept locked away for so long, pushed down by rules, by fear, by the weight of everything that had held me back. And in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. I didn't know what to do with this feeling. I didn't know if I was supposed to hate myself for what had happened or let myself give into it. The confusion, the messiness of it all, made my head spin. How could something that felt so wrong feel so right at the same time? I wanted to say something, anything to break the silence that now felt suffocating. But the words wouldn't come. All I could do was stand there, breathless and unsure, trying to reconcile the chaos inside me with the man who still stood so close, his body still pressed against mine. What had we just done? And what was I supposed to do now? I couldn't breathe without feeling it. The weight of it, the constant pressure building inside me, crushing me slowly, relentlessly. I wasn't sure how to keep going, how to pretend that everything was fine when the world around me had shifted so drastically. How could I look at Emma, my sweet little girl, and not see the guilt in her eyes, the worry I knew I was masking, pretending everything was still normal? How could I continue living in the same house with Caleb and act like what we shared didn't change me in ways I couldn't even begin to explain? I wanted to scream, to make it all go away. But the truth was, I couldn't undo it. I couldn't take back the touch, the stolen moments, the intimacy I had allowed myself to believe in. It wasn't just a mistake, it was something deeper, something I hadn't known I was missing until it had consumed me. And what terrified me the most was that, on some level, a part of me didn't want to take it back. That was the hardest truth to face. For so long, I had told myself that I was okay, that being a single mother, juggling 2 jobs, and raising Emma was enough, that I didn't need anything more than that. I had wrapped myself in the role of the dutiful mother, convincing myself that the sacrifices I made, putting my own dreams and desires aside, were all worth it. There was no room for anything else. I didn't need a man, didn't need affection, didn't need anything that could complicate this already complicated life. But then Caleb came into our lives, and suddenly, I wasn't so sure anymore. The moment he walked through the door, everything changed. It wasn't just his smile, the kindness in his eyes, or the way he seemed to genuinely care about Emma. It was the way he saw me. He saw me in a way no one else had in years. Not just as a mother, not just as someone to be taken care of, but as a woman. It had been so long since I felt seen like that. I had buried that woman deep inside me. The woman who felt alive, who felt desired. The woman who wasn't just the caregiver, but was also someone else, someone worth admiring. And Caleb made me feel that again. He made me feel like I was more than the person I had become. And that feeling, it was intoxicating. It was like breathing in fresh air after suffocating for so long. But with every breath came the realization that it was dangerous, that it could never end well, that I was playing with fire. I kept telling myself I could stop, that I could end it, walk away from this mess I had gotten myself into. It was simple, wasn't it? Just take a step back, keep my distance, and the whole thing would fade away. It wasn't worth the risk. I had everything to lose.
Emma.
My job, my reputation. But every time Caleb walked into the house, every time our eyes met, I felt that resolve slip further and further from my grasp. It wasn't just the physical attraction, it was the emotional connection. The way he made me feel seen, wanted, alive. And it was a feeling I didn't want to give up. It wasn't just about the moments we had shared. It wasn't just about the stolen kisses, the late-night conversations that had turned into something more, something dangerous. It was the tension that lingered between us even when we weren't touching. It was in the way we avoided looking at each other for too long, in the way we danced around the feelings we both knew were there, but refused to acknowledge. It was in the way we found excuses to be alone, to get closer, without crossing that final line. Every time Caleb was near, I felt myself unraveling.
Piece by piece.
Slowly at first, then faster. My control, my carefully constructed walls, they were crumbling. I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. How much longer I could pretend that everything was fine, that I didn't want this to continue. The guilt, it ate at me, but so did the desire. The part of me that had been buried for so long was beginning to rise again, and I couldn't push it down. The hardest part, though, was the secrecy. The lies I had to tell. The way I had to twist the truth to make it seem like everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Every conversation with Emma felt like a performance. Every smile I gave her a mask I had to wear. And Caleb, he was right there, always there, so close yet so far. He would smile at me across the room, and I would have to look away because if I didn't, I feared the cracks would start to show. I feared Emma would see it too, the way I couldn't seem to stop myself from falling into this web I had spun. And I knew it wasn't just me. Caleb was caught in it too. The way he avoided my gaze sometimes, how his jaw would tighten when we were near each other. We were playing a dangerous game. A game where the stakes were far higher than either of us realized. We kept pulling away, but every time we did, we were drawn back in, closer than before. It was like a slow burn, a fire that started small but kept growing, and neither of us knew how to extinguish it. I couldn't help but feel like we were both slipping, slowly but surely, towards something neither of us could control. And maybe that was the scariest part of all. I wasn't sure anymore if I wanted to stop. And in that uncertainty, I was losing myself. I couldn't escape the truth. I didn't know how to fix what I had broken. I didn't know how to look at Emma, to look at Caleb, and pretend like everything was okay when deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. It was the kind of moment you fear, but can't quite prepare yourself for when it arrives. The kind that shatters everything, leaving you grasping at the pieces, knowing that there's no putting them back together. It wasn't Emma who found us, caught us in some vulnerable, stolen moment where our hearts and bodies betrayed us.
No.
It was Caleb, the person I had thought I could trust, the one who had become my escape from everything that felt suffocating in my life. At first, the change had been subtle. I would catch him looking at me, his eyes distant, like he was miles away, even though he was standing right in front of me. His touches, once so reassuring and full of a longing I couldn't explain, became less frequent, like a secret I wasn't supposed to know. And when he did touch me, it was as if he were afraid. Afraid of feeling too much, afraid of what that might mean for the both of us. I had noticed the shift, of course. I had felt it deep in my chest, the tension between us growing, becoming unbearable. It wasn't a break I could have predicted, not in the way it came. I had expected it to happen in some fiery confrontation, where the truth would come spilling out. But instead, it was like the flame had just been smothered, slowly, quietly, until I was left in the dark. The worst part, the part that tore me apart, was how much it hurt. It was a slow, agonizing pain, like a piece of my soul being pulled away bit by bit. The guilt was there, of course, and I knew that the decisions I'd made, decisions I'd never thought I'd be capable of, had consequences. But the real sting came from the way Caleb, the person who had made me feel alive again, now looked at me as though nothing had ever happened. Like it was all just a dream, and nothing was worth fighting for anymore. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make him explain why he was pulling away, why he was so intent on destroying what we had. But I didn't. I couldn't. I stayed silent, just like I always had, hoping, praying that he would come back, that the pull between us would be enough to overcome the distance he was putting between us. But as the days passed, I knew it wasn't enough. We were both drowning in this tangled web of guilt, desire, and regret, and there was no easy way out. And then one evening it happened. Caleb walked into the kitchen like it was just another day, and yet I could feel the heaviness in the air. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. Finally, he spoke my name, and I could hear the strain in his voice. "Rachel," he said, his voice tight and heavy. "We need to talk." Those words, simple, yet cutting, were like a punch to my gut. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I just nodded, preparing myself for whatever was coming next. Even though I knew deep down that the truth had been building to this moment for a long time. His eyes didn't meet mine as he spoke, and the words that followed felt like they were tearing through both of us. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. "The guilt, it's eating me alive. And I love her, Rachel. I love Emma. I've always loved her. I can't keep doing this to you, to her. It's not right. It's not fair." I thought I had prepared myself for this moment, but hearing him say the words, hearing him admit that he loved her for the first time, really hearing him, was like a knife twisting in my heart. I didn't know how to respond, didn't know how to process the flood of emotions that surged inside me. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how much I had loved him, how he had made me feel like I could breathe again. But all I could do was nod, a tear slipping down my cheek without my permission. Because deep down I knew that everything had changed in that moment. We're lost, I thought, though I couldn't say the words aloud. The damage had been done, and even though a part of me still yearned for him, I knew it was over. There was no going back to the way things were before. No matter how much I wished for it, the line had been crossed, and there was no uncrossing it. That night, Emma came home. She had no idea that the world around her was crumbling, that the very foundation of everything she trusted was falling apart. But I saw it in her eyes, I could feel the change in the air, the subtle shift that told me she knew something was wrong. She didn't ask, not directly, but I could feel the weight of her silent questions hanging in the air. The days that followed were a blur. I tried to go through the motions, to pretend like nothing had changed, like I wasn't suffocating under the weight of the choices I had made. But the guilt was there, always there, gnawing at me, whispering that I wasn't the person I thought I was. And yet, in the quietest moments when I was alone, there was the other feeling, the one that had never really gone away. The desire. It still lingered, despite everything. The way Caleb had made me feel alive, in a way that no one else ever had, was something I couldn't simply erase. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if there's a way to fix this, to undo the damage that has been done. But one thing is certain, I can't escape it. The truth is inescapable. A weight I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Caleb, Emma, the choices I made, they will haunt me, not as a punishment, but as a reminder that some moments, some connections, are so powerful that they leave an indelible mark on your soul. No matter how hard I try, no matter how much I wish it could all go away, the memory of Caleb, the way he made me feel alive, the way he made me believe in something more, will stay with me forever.